Hey, I want to welcome Kennesaw Happenings podcast. We are live or we're podcasting from Overture, the 55 and older community right by Academy Sports and behind QT. In the studio is a friend of mine. We came together at the KBA before COVID, and we were going to do some really cool things with how do we stream, how do we take an existing university and make it available for more people. But unfortunately, COVID happened. So that kind of crushed our plans. So Jim, welcome back. I'm glad we got a chance to get together here. Tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah, so I'm Jim Fuhs. I'm the president of Fusion Marketing. I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, and I like to say I do marketing the Marine Corps way. And I'm a marketing consultant, and I'm also a podcaster, live streamer, and I do remote live stream production, which, to kind of keep it short, basically I help people do this live video stuff from behind the scenes from almost anywhere. So it's really been a lot of fun over these last few years.
And it is, the changing world is absolutely so exciting. Before we went on the podcast, Jim and I were talking about the setup within the movie room, and he was giving me all kinds of ideas on how you can have different camera angles, how the audio gets communicated. It's a whole world out there that it's a maze. I mean, I was like, my eyes were opening up because you just don't know what you don't know. So what would you share with our viewers? Like, I always like that. How did you get into this business? Like, you retire from the military, veteran, and then you're thinking, what do I do?
Yeah, that was definitely part of it. I mean, the first few years after my retirement, I was working for a couple of defense companies. I got into government contract consulting, but then I also went through a major life change, went through a divorce. And so, part of it was like trying to figure out what is it I really wanted to do. I was living in Eastern North Carolina at the time, and I started to see, people making money off of, helping people with social media. Mm-hmm. And I've always liked technology. I've always kind of been in that stuff. So I just started teaching myself how to do it. And I was in a BNI at the time, and I got some of my fellow BNI members, as I made that transition from government contracting to marketing, to let me, let me be their guinea pig. And so I started doing, Facebook and all those things. And then I started teaching it at workshops for a couple of community colleges, which I still do to this day. And so then I think it was about 2018, I went to Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, probably one of the largest social media conferences. And they were talking about Facebook Live and how important it was for, at that time, Facebook wanted everyone to go live. And so I'm one of those believers that, when you sometimes look at teachers, they've never done it, but I believe in doing so that I can teach better. And so I started using Facebook Live, and it just has kind of evolved from there because I was doing it for some of my clients as far as getting them to be on camera. And I think, if anything, that set me up for the, not knowing what was going to happen, but being adaptable. When COVID happened, now all of a sudden people are like, hey, can you help me go live on video? I don't know how to do this. And, a lot of times people just want the end result. They don't want to know everything that goes into it. So that was definitely, a game changer for my business. And I've become a huge fan of not only video, and podcasts, but now it's kind of morphing into what we call video podcast. YouTube is really big on that. And I think what you're doing is great because, I think sometimes people feel like, oh, well, Pete's already got a podcast, I can't do one. Well, our voices are different for everyone. And you and I could say the same thing, and they'll think you're a genius, and they'll think I'm a bonehead. So you don't let that get in your way, be the excuse. The other thing that I think people don't realize is we call it pod fade. We call it, even though they're quote unquote been, there's probably 6 to 10 million podcasts. maybe 10% of them are active, and active meaning that they've actually published an episode in the last 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll see a lot of people will quit because they're not getting that instant gratification of lots of downloads, lots of listeners, but that gets back into social media, it gets back into marketing, or you got to promote it. If I don't know you exist, why would I listen? It, and word of mouth, as much as that's the way we grew up, it is not always as strong as it used to be. And so you got to figure out ways to get your message out. And I think podcasts are a great way to do that.
I have to agree with you, but I like how you said that. I don't know the number of podcasts out there, and 10% are, in that active category of 90 days publishing a podcast. I used to say when I did digital marketing at a small agency that if you got a beautiful website, it's like having a billboard in the desert. It's beautiful, but nobody sees it. And if you can't drive traffic and eyeballs to you wherever you are, like social media, if you can't bring the traffic to whatever you're doing, and the other person said, it's like winking at a good-looking girl in the dark. No, she didn't see it. So if you don't be I love to say, like, don't be the best kept secret. You want to use the resources of today to get more people seeing whatever you're doing. So when you were like jumping into something completely new from defense contracting and consulting into social, what lesson, I think I know the answer because you touched on it a little bit. What lesson would you tell our viewers that are dabbling into, let's say, live streaming? Because you told me about StreamYard when we did the KBA University. And to this day, I used it for 2 years. Then I got away from it. Now I'm back with it. So some things you just don't know are out there. What would you say when it comes to like what you learned and then how streaming is working for the average business today?
Well, I think it's being underutilized for one. I think that people get, we in fact, have a podcast and a show on Amazon called Dealcasters, and our big thing is don't fear the gear. Mm-hmm. And so I think the problem is we put in this preconceived notion that we've got to be equivalent to, a television production studio. It's going to cost thousands of dollars in equipment. And the reality is you can start with just your smartphone. Mm-hmm. And then you just kind of build from there. I was talking to you about, there's a product called Reincubate Camo that you can actually tie your phone into your computer, and now your phone is your webcam. So you don't even have to go buy a webcam. And I actually think the phones probably have a better camera anyway. Most of them now have 4K. Mm-hmm. So, but it's that whole idea of, if you're saying, well, I don't have good internet, I don't know about going live, record it, right? Do what we call B-roll, record what's going on, and then bring that into a live video, or share that video. And then, just like we're talking here live right now, then talk mm-hmm. about what people just saw. Because what business are failing to do is they're forgetting that. And I like to say, I'm not, even though on Amazon we would quote unquote live sell, it's really live solving. Mm-hmm. Where really all businesses are solving people's problems. Yep. Your video content, which is what people are consuming, right? It's this younger generation grew up with the smartphone and watching videos. They didn't grow up reading the newspaper, reading books, as much as we still love that. And there's still people that use that. You have to think about meet your customer where they are. And video is the number one thing, and this gets into the 4 E's of social media, is the first one is you're educating people mm-hmm. about what you do. Because like you said, you could have the greatest website in the world, but I don't usually go out on the web looking for websites, mm-hmm. right? I already know where I'm going to go. Or we have to think of where people are in the buyer's journey. I'm probably not going to go on Facebook looking for businesses to help me. I'm going to go to search, and that's going to end me up maybe on YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is also the largest search engine, and YouTube is basically the second biggest. So I encourage, I know you do as well, that businesses should start a YouTube channel, start putting content out there that educates people, because that's going to live out there forever. Basically, it's your legacy of your business. And the same with these video podcasts. You'll be around forever now, Pete, because of the stuff you're creating. Because unless YouTube were to disappear, but I'm sure this stuff will live on. And so I think that's that lasting legacy, and that search as well, that really helps you, that you don't always get when, if you're on Facebook or some of these other platforms, you're hoping that the algorithms, are in your favor. And that's very difficult to do, especially organically, because most people don't want to spend the money on ads, because it's this, people want the easy button. They want this quick return on investment. And especially on the social media side of things, I think that is a much longer game, as opposed to, and you just have to be consistent. And that's where something like a podcast or a live stream, and consistent doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't even have to be every week. It just has to be consistent.
Yeah. I like that word. And I have a friend of mine, and when I was talking to him about a book, I said, look, you just do Amazon Prime, get it in 2 days. He goes, I don't have it. I said, well, ask your wife to get it. He goes, she doesn't have it. I said, what? You don't have access to Amazon Prime? He goes, no. I'm going like, really? Is there anybody out there that doesn't have access to it? And I couldn't have moved into this place without Amazon. I did what you just said. I looked for problems, and then I'd solve them. So I would look for cords, just different things, and then it's on my doorstep 2 days later or next day, whatever.
Sometimes the same day.
Yeah, it's like crazy how you're solving problems. But tell our viewers, because I watch videos on there on solutions. What you're doing, Dealcaster? What are you doing to help your clients on Amazon to leverage that platform?
So we're really focusing on products that we, one, use, two, that we believe in. It's led to us working with companies like, Shure Microphone, Heil, and some others. I work with StreamYard as well. Is explaining how to use it, right? And it's not always the most expensive thing, right? So, as an example, you need a tripod. We'll do a video on the tripod. We'll show you how to set the tripod up, how we use it. Same thing with these microphones. Sometimes we'll do a comparison. How does this microphone sound versus this one? Or like we work with Cloud Microphone. You can use a cloud lifter, and the cloud lifter does this very subtle thing, but it improves the quality of the audio with the same microphone. And people just don't realize how that all changes things. And a lot of times too, and you and I both talked about this, the most important thing in a video is the audio. Because people will forgive the bad video, especially if you're just starting out. But if your audio is bad and it's breaking up, or getting all kinds of weird noises, they're gonna go away. And there's actually a term for it. I guess some people, that actually will almost like drive them crazy if it's really bad audio, and they're not going to come back. And so I think part of it is, we encourage people to keep it simple to get started, and not to come up with all these, reasons why not to. And so we've actually taken those videos, we've done hundreds of videos. We've created a YouTube channel, which is continuing to grow. And that's the other thing, right? When you make a video, instead of quote unquote sharing the link, say from YouTube to whatever, upload that video natively to the platform you want it on. The only thing you got to remember, unless you're live streaming, is some of them have a time limit on how long the video can be if it's not live streamed. I think LinkedIn is 10 minutes. I don't know if Facebook has a limit. Sometimes it's a file size limit, but realistically, you probably can explain most things in these 10-minute or less pieces about your business, and almost kind of create a series. that makes people come back, right? And so if you don't want to go live, create that series, and then you can just schedule it over time. Like, okay, we're going to record this in a couple of days, and now we've got content for the next 2 or 3 months. And I think that's, and then repurposing can be powerful as well. Take that nugget out of that video, make it a reel, make it a short. And then it's like, if you want to watch the full interview or see the whole story, here's the link to do that. So I think that's what businesses are, they're overthinking it. They're making it seem like it's much harder than it really is. And they're not thinking about the long-term benefit of doing something like that. They're thinking, oh, I'm going to have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get video done. And you can, but you can also either learn to do it yourself or find a freelancer that will come in and do it for you for a reasonable rate. And I would also say this, though, remember, and this comes to, Pete, you're very aware of this as a marketer. You're paying these people for the expertise that they've taken hours and hours to develop. So don't undercut them and think like, oh, I can just go get my kid to do it. It's just not going to be the same.
Yes. I think that's a lesson I'd like to emphasize is and maybe it's a guy thing, I don't know. We're like the do-it-yourself, I'm going to plow through it. I'm going to figure this thing out. That's probably the thing that holds you back. When you don't leverage other people's experience, pay for it. Don't be like, well, I don't want to pay Jim this. I can do it myself. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So if you're growing a business and you're focused on your expertise, you don't need to be dabbling in 20 other things that are just get you distracted. What do you say to the person, like they haven't done video, they haven't really dove into that area? When they come to you, what are they asking? Like what would be a typical scenario of that journey?
Well, a lot of times it's like, well, what am I going to do a video about? And so it'll be as simple as asking questions like, well, have you ever done a video that explains what your business does? Do you have videos that describe what each of your services are? Do you have testimonial videos or before and after videos of projects you've done, and maybe you can get, or even getting what we call user-generated content. Your, clients just like to do a video like, hey, this is what Pete did for us, and we're, these are the end results. That's what's going to build that traction. That's that repeatable. People can go back and watch it over and over and over. You can then take that, right? You can turn it into a blog post. You can, if you really want to, right? You can turn it into a podcast or a sound clip, because I think to your point earlier that you brought up about like the billboard in the desert, that is a problem with some marketing today, is that, people aren't going to see it because you don't have it being driven the right way to get that repeat traffic.
Right. What would you say? We agree on so many things about how we develop content. So when it comes to content, give our viewers a couple ideas on what content you feel this year you're going to focus on that will drive value for your clients.
I think for me is more about explaining how to use video in getting more eyes on stuff, and even ways of how to do it. As an example, I think we talking about what you were talking about doing down in this room is like, okay, I don't have good internet. Well, guess what? We can record everything perfectly fine, and then we can upload it as if it was live. And so, maybe you want to go out in some remote spot where you just know there's no way you could ever do a Facebook Live or something else because it would be, freezing and jittering. Just record it, right? Record it with your phone. You don't feel like you got to go out and buy a, $1,000 plus camera, because your phone was probably that much anyway. And just record it. You don't even necessarily have to do the audio at the time, right? Because you can bring that video into so many different programs. I think even, there's a lot of stuff like iMovie and other things where you just record your voice over it. So you could just start talking. You could put put music in. So it's really gotten a lot easier, or find someone that can do it for you. There's a lot of different people that are getting into that stuff. But then, but have that strategy of like, what is it I want people to learn about? So for me, it's like, I want people to learn about how video can help them get their message out, get more eyes on their content, because posting, words just doesn't catch people's attention. Even graphics doesn't catch the attention as much anymore. And especially now with, the rise of AI, there's pros and cons to it. It's like, did they really create this picture, or was this made by AI? And so you've got to, this creates authenticity, right? This is really me. This is really Pete. These are not AI people talking to you. So I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for that, connection. That's where video, especially live video, allows for that. But even, you got to remember, not everybody can be there at the time that works for you. You'll get lots of replay viewers, and then by repurposing it, making it a podcast and other things, that allows for people to consume it in the format that they prefer.
Right.
It's not always about you, and it also gets you out in more places. And I think that's, that's in a way almost like the shotgun approach: get it out everywhere, and eventually you start to figure out, doing your analysis, where are things being most effective. Like for you, it might be LinkedIn and YouTube, because you're working with other businesses, and it's not Facebook. It's not, I don't know, maybe it's TikTok for you, but you don't have to be everywhere. I think that would be the other lessons. Focus on where you think your people are. Do that analysis to see, when those things may change sometimes, and you may be surprised too, because they'll give you that info, who's actually the market that you're attracting. It may not be the one you thought you were.
Yeah, I love that. And you said earlier, and I wanted to drill down just a tiny bit on that. So you, in BNI, you said you had some people you started, you learned it first and then you taught it. Can go a little bit deeper into that, because I love that concept, and I don't always see it applied in business.
Well, you get into that, and I guess you could make that argument whether it's true or not, right? And to be an expert, you need to have 10,000 hours into something. Doesn't matter if sports, whatever. And so it's interesting today, because technology and things are changing so fast, that as an example, we've had these people that last year were crypto experts and NFT experts, and today they're AI experts. So I don't necessarily like that term, but what I can do is, I can keep working with these different things that I want to do. As an example, live streaming, and I learn how to use it. I figure out from talking to people, well, what are the challenges they have? Like we were talking, like, how do I use multiple cameras? How do I do this? And so you experiment with it, you play with it, you try to break the software, because I think, even as we get older, the most important thing that we have to remember is that we have to continue to learn. Life changes, the world changes, the way we used to do things doesn't exist anymore, right? Blockbuster is no longer here. Who knows, right? This year, 5 years from now, there may be a new social media platform that everybody's flocking to. I mean, these are things that you have to be, and this, I think, sometimes comes from my military background, is you got to be adaptable and not get so set in stone. And I think that's where a lot of businesses get stuck in, like, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And it's worked, for years, but then you're like, okay, but how are your sales? Why, how is it? We look at what's going on in the brick and mortar sector, right? Amazon is crushing it. So it's like, is it because they have dominance? Well, they are the number one product search engine, but that doesn't mean people won't buy online from other people. But how frustrating can it be to go into a store and find out the item you want they don't have, but you can order it from their online site? So I think there's people you want to, it's that tactile thing. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. And maybe that's what's going to happen more, as well as, and that's the other thing, right? VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. These are things I want to learn more about because I think that's kind of the next thing coming, not necessarily overnight, because the thing we have to remember, especially with technology, is it can sometimes be a have and have not thing. And so we're like, oh, well, what do you mean you don't have this or that? Well, it sometimes people can't afford it, right? Things have gotten expensive with inflation. You know, internet access isn't always readily available for people. And so, you know, figure out how you can do things really as simple as possible. And that's why I think sometimes people get, you know, let themselves get overwhelmed by with the technology. Like, oh, I got to have this, you know, crazy setup. No, sometimes all you need is your phone and a good wireless microphone, and you can do all kinds of great content.
Yeah, I love that concept, because in business, if you give a business owner an unlimited budget, they're buying all kinds of things. But if you get creative and you figure things out, because I think, maybe tell me what you think. Do it yourself is okay if you want to learn the route, and then you want to outsource it. So learning things is critical because we're changing so rapidly, and to keep exposing yourself to what's possible and having that kind of attitude. What do you think? You mentioned AI. I kind of like hearing people's thoughts on it. What's your thoughts on how AI may be impacting your business?
So I use a tool called Magi.co, and it's browser based, you know, but I look at it more as a tool, not the end result. It helps me speed up my process. It creates outlines for me. I can create scripts, but I still want to do this stuff myself because I want it to be in my voice. And even though it may get better at being in our voice, it's still, you know, I'm not ready to give 100% over to the machines.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There's a Jim Quick. I mean, when I had my stroke, the brain gets affected. So I was kind of diving into brain exercises and brain stuff, brain this. And I even, to the point, like when I was a shepherd, they said, okay, don't drink any alcohol for a year. I went to my speech path. I said, are they serious? And she goes, yes, they are. Now they're conservative, but they're serious because alcohol does affect the brain. So I went on a quest to learn more about it by just learning more about it. I always thought alcohol was the liver issue. You know, you're going to, you know, have cirrhosis of liver if you overuse your alcohol, but it affects the brain. So this guy, Jim Quick, has a book, and he teaches people how to think. And the brain is a muscle. So if you don't use that muscle, use it or lose it. So, you know, you look at like GPS, we used to pull the maps out and figure out that, oh, now we just hit a button and it takes us to the place. We don't think, it just right, left, you know. So I think challenging yourself to use this thing, because he said HI is his new AI, human intelligence. You can't replace this brain and the thinking behind it. So you logically have to keep reasoning with things. I think I like how you said it's replacing some mundane tasks that would take you a lot of time, scripts and things. So you're kind of figuring out how it can complement you, not replace that voice, your uniqueness, whatever you do in your business. You never outsource yourself. You outsource the things that enhance you. So what would you say, like, I'm always curious, like streaming, if you had to say like 3 years out, what would you see that world looking like?
Well, I'm starting to see
2 years out.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, I'm starting to see it already. I work with a company that's based here out of Atlanta called Eastreamly, and they're actually doing live shopping within the video, where you can, like right now, we could have a little widget at the bottom that would be selling that golf ball that's in that picture behind us, and they would click it and it would go into the cart. but they would never leave the video experience.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I think that's something that's coming, and that's something that right now it cuts out the middleman of even the social platforms, because you can have people come directly to your broadcast channel. You can embed it into your website.
Mm-hmm.
And now it becomes much more of a live relationship between you and your customer, as opposed to, oh, well, I hope that whatever social platform is going to show it to the people I want it to, where they're not going to say, well, no, you can't sell that because we don't like what that product represents. So I think that's where you're going to, that I think is coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's, there's some companies doing that. And you can take products like StreamYard, like Ecamm, and use that as your production studio to
Mm-hmm.
up the quality of your production, whether, with graphics and other things. And so I think it's more of that, being able to do things, like that. I think that's going to evolve into the, the virtual reality stuff, the things that are happening with the Oculus Quest. And of course, I know it's a high price point right now, the Apple Vision Pro. I think we're going to see more of that, and how it allows, I think in some aspects, it's going to be great for maybe some people with disabilities, because they're going to be able to do more now, because they can visualize, but maybe they don't have some of the other capabilities that, is going to make that. And I think as that happens, right, I think remote work, as much as some companies want to go back to the old ways, I think that's going to continue to grow as well. And how you can potentially, as a business, think, to your point, how can I find good people that, because maybe they can't afford to live where your business is located, but they would be a benefit to your business. I think the infrastructure, what's happening with the internet in general, 5G, I don't know if they're going to come out with a 6G, but just the ability to stream from anywhere,
right, and
be able to be connected on these devices, I think is going to be very powerful for those that think about it and how they can do that. And, and even to your point with AI, as an example, if I were to give you the time and I were to say, Pete, what are the 10 things you need to do to be a better golfer? Mm-hmm. You'd have to think about it. But if you put it into AI, it would give you that list. Yep. And you might say, yeah, you know what? I didn't think about number 9.
Right.
But I knew 1 through 7, but you got that in 2 minutes instead of spending half an hour. And so yes. I think that's where it's beneficial to really take a look at that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's so important to be looking ahead to what's going to help your business. There's a lady that she was on an earlier podcast. She's coming back next week. She's third generation photographer. She's from Sicily. So we met on LinkedIn, and she teaches female entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs mainly, but just entrepreneurs, to be comfortable in front of a camera. Mm-hmm. And of all the people, I'll ask people if they want to be a guest. I do get my femalers to say, that's not me. What they're saying is they're fearful. They think that if they mention something, it's there forever. But I mean, speak from the heart and you have a common conversation. It's not as intimidating. Do you find that people will resist being behind that video camera? Have you seen that?
I definitely think so. And it's interesting because I can say from my own perspective that I don't think I was always comfortable about being on camera, especially when you're the only one there, right? Because, mm-hmm. We both have been involved with Toastmasters before, mm-hmm. and you usually have an audience and you're getting that feedback. Right. And so, but when you're on camera and, whether maybe you're recording it to put it out, you don't have a live audience, you really don't always know. And you feel a little nervous. But really, it's no different than talking in person. Right. You just have, there's a camera there. And really, in our society, there's cameras everywhere. So you should probably always remember to be camera ready to a point. But I think, and that's where I try to help businesses overcome that fear is, so as an example, just did a recording with a client. And so what I did is I put the camera between me and them. And so they're looking at me while they're talking, but I've got it set up so they're looking at the camera and they don't even realize it.
Okay.
So that helps with that eye contact aspect. So that's, I think, one of those little tricks, right? Get that camera between you and them with a tripod, have everything set up in a nice scene, and then just make sure you've got good audio. And that's a great way to get started. And just practice, right? Record yourself, watch it back, see what you did good, see what you did bad. There's, teleprompting software out there that works on your phone as well as your computer now that allows you to, read that, maybe those points that you want to make sure you hit without it looking like you're reading something. And I think, but I think we all, have to overcome our fears in general. I mean, I'm very impressed with how you have overcome the challenges you've had over these last couple of years. I mean, it's amazing, and I continue to hope that that continues to progress. I mean, how many podcasts have you done since?
About 175.
Yeah.
I mean, and the first one, they were reminding me that I forgot to ask this guest. We were doing golf and we were doing foursomes. So I would ask questions around, and the people would say, "Hey, Pete, you didn't ask Joe that same question." So you're going to be awkward at first.
Right.
But to your question, and I agree with you. I heard a guy say, "More." Let me see if I get this right. When you look death in the mirror, it changes your perspective on things, and you have a second chance. So I think he called what is it when you anyway, it motivates you. So my fear now versus 5 years ago is like light years, because I don't give a rip what anybody says, because you look at your life and it's almost over, and you say, you know what? It isn't. I got a second chance. So I don't care what Jim says about me. Hey, your hair is parted in the middle, Pete. What, you look like a goofball. I don't give a rip. But I did before, was more sensitive to it. So I think the question, like you're saying, like fear, I mean, you always hear that false evidence appearing real. Fear is out there. It's just, how do you approach it? And so, Jim, I could geek out on this all day long, because I love, just with our conversation about just what's coming, what's possible, what is out there. How could people get a hold of you? They want to seek out your services.
Yeah, I'd say the easiest way is you find me on LinkedIn, Jim Fuhs. Reach out to me there, or I'm also on all the other social platforms. You could also go to dealcasters.shop if you want to see what we've done on Amazon, or just even go to our Dealcasters YouTube channel, and you'll see some of the interviews that we've both done and that we've been a part of as well. And then we've got the podcast as well that you can find and listen. We've had some great guests, and looking to probably start something here in the near future. I'm now on the board for the Georgia Veterans Network. We're looking to help veterans in the northwest Georgia area that are in some cases struggling, and those are things that are important to me as a veteran as well. So,
well, I missed it at the beginning, but thank you for your service. We have a wall of honor downstairs where there's 18 of our veterans that are honored, and I think we never want to take our freedoms for granted, because what we have today is a result of what you were doing to protect them. So, thank a veteran out there. And if you're a business and you have opportunities, open them up for veterans and allow them to take their skills that they developed in the military and transfer them right into the private sector, because they are talented, and they have, I heard somebody say, when you think of the millions of dollars that you have responsibility for that you can't get in the private sector, it's a natural way but it doesn't always happen. So,
right.
Yeah, that's that. I think your point about Northwest Georgia and shining some light on opportunities for veterans is a wonderful thing. So, what would you want our our viewers to take away from this podcast today, what would be one thing that you could share with them?
If you're a business, get started with the video. Doesn't have to be live. Get started. If you don't want to have your own show, be a guest. Get on shows like Pete's and other shows in your area so that people can learn about you, because stop making yourself the best kept secret in your own backyard.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate you being a guest on Kennesaw Happenings.
Thank you, Pete.